you wake up tired,
No.
not because you worked hard, but because someone fed on you yesterday. You smiled, you listened, you gave, you explained yourself again, and somehow, by the end of the day, you were the one apologizing. You tell yourself you are kind, understanding, mature. But what if that kindness is not virtue? What if it is bait? Look around. The most selfish people you know are not lonely. They are supported, defended, protected. And you, the one trying to do the right thing, feel drained, confused, quietly resentful. Here is the truth no one warned you about. In a world of power games, goodness without boundaries does not make you noble. It makes you edible. And if you do not learn how manipulation really works, you will keep calling exploitation love, right up until there is nothing left of you. This is not comfort content. This is not here to make you feel validated, healed, or seen. This is a warning, because the moment you start asking why, you always end up drained, confused, and carrying emotional weight that does not belong to you. You step into a world most people refuse to acknowledge. Power games exist whether you believe in them or not. Manipulation does not require evil intent. It only requires imbalance. And imbalance appears the moment one person gives endlessly while another learns that taking has no cost. Kindness without limits is not morality. It is exposure. The world quietly tests people like you. It watches how much you tolerate, how often you explain yourself, how quickly you forgive. And once it learns that your boundaries are soft, it begins to lean on you, not violently, gradually, subtly, with smiles, with stories, with just enough vulnerability to hook your empathy. You are not targeted because you are weak. You are targeted because you are open. And openness without structure invites invasion. There is a hard truth philosophers understood long before psychology tried to soften it. A man who insists on being good among those who are not will not be rewarded. He will be consumed. Not because goodness is wrong, but because goodness without awareness becomes predictable. And predictability is the favorite tool of manipulators. They do not overpower you. They study you. They learn what makes you feel guilty, what makes you feel responsible, what makes you stay when every signal tells you to leave. You call it patience. They call it leverage. You call it understanding. They call it permission. This video exists because staying blind has consequences. You lose energy first, then clarity, then self-respect. You begin to doubt your instincts. You start rehearsing conversations that already happened. You feel uneasy but cannot name why. And slowly, without realizing it, you reshape yourself to avoid conflict with people who never planned to protect you in return. This is how manipulation works at its most effective level. It does not look like cruelty. It looks like familiarity. It looks like need. It looks like you being the only one who understands them. And that is why this content is dangerous for the wrong audience. Because once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them. You will recognize how often you were not chosen, but used. How often your silence was interpreted as consent. How often your empathy was mistaken for obligation. If you stay blind, nothing changes. You will keep attracting the same dynamics in different faces, different names, different stories. If you see clearly something uncomfortable happens, you realize that reclaiming control does not require becoming cruel. It requires becoming precise. It requires boundaries that do not need explanation. It requires the courage to disappoint people who benefit from your confusion. This is the threshold. On one side is the familiar pain of being needed and drained. On the other is the unfamiliar discomfort of clarity and distance. Most people never cross it because they are afraid of what they will lose. What they never ask is what they are already losing by staying the same. The first pattern hides behind chaos. You meet them during a crisis. Something is always falling apart. A job lost, a relationship burning, a deadline missed. They speak fast, overwhelmed, drowning, and somehow you are the only calm surface in their storm. Picture this. Your phone lights up late at night. Their name again. You already know the tone before you answer. Breathless, urgent. They say everything is collapsing. Again, you listen, you reassure. You step in, you help them clean the mess. You offer time, solutions, emotional stability, and when the smoke clears, nothing changes. A week later, a month later, another disaster appears, almost engineered, almost predictable. This archetype is the chaos architect, symbolized by the sinking ship that somehow never fully goes under because someone like you keeps bailing water. Their signature line sounds harmless. I do not know why this always happens to me. Psychologically, they create instability because chaos gives them leverage. In crisis, rules dissolve, boundaries soften, urgency overrides logic. When everything is on fire, no one questions who started the blaze. And you, wired to restore order, step into a role you never agreed to. Your inner dialogue traps you. If I do not help, everything will fall apart. They need me. I am the only one who can handle this. What you do not see is that your competence becomes their excuse to remain incompetent. Your presence removes consequences. The more capable you are, the more chaotic they are allowed to be. Law 1 is simple and cold. Never stabilize a system that benefits from being broken. And here is the open loop you need to sit with. If their life only functions when you are exhausted, who exactly is the chaos serving, and what happens the moment you stop rescuing them? The second pattern is quieter, but far more consuming. There is no crisis, no explosion, no obvious disaster, just need, endless, shapeless need. You meet them slowly, a colleague, a friend, a partner, someone who always seems slightly depleted, slightly behind, slightly empty. They ask for small things at first: time, attention, favors, understanding, and you give them because it costs little in the beginning. But the requests never stop. No matter how much you pour in, they never fill up. Picture the scene. You cancel your plans to help them again. You listen to the same complaints with different details. You offer advice, they never reply. You show up emotionally, financially, mentally, and afterward, there is no relief. No gratitude that lasts. Just another reach into you tomorrow. This is the bottomless pit, symbolized by a well with no visible floor. Their signature line is always some variation of, I just need a little more. Psychologically, they operate on entitlement, disguised as vulnerability. They have learned that need is power. As long as they remain unsatisfied, they remain relevant. Gratitude would end the transaction, so gratitude never fully arrives. And you stay because of your inner dialogue. They have had it hard. If I stop, I am abandoning them. I should be able to give more. What traps you is hope addiction. The belief that one day, finally, they will be okay and you will rest. But that day never comes because your giving has replaced their responsibility. Law 2 cuts through the illusion. Never pour into a container that refuses to develop a bottom. And the open loop is this. If they only stay close when they are taking, what exactly remains between you when you stop giving? The third pattern weaponizes innocence. You do not meet them in strength or need, but in suffering. They arrive wounded, misunderstood, wronged by everyone who came before you. Their stories are heavy with injustice. Bosses who never appreciated them, friends who betrayed them, families who failed them. And as they speak, You feel something tighten in your chest. Sympathy, protectiveness, a quiet obligation to be different from all the others who hurt them. Picture the scene. You try to set a boundary, gently, calmly. Immediately, their face changes. Their voice cracks. Tears appear or anger replaces them. They remind you of everything they have endured. They accuse you of being just like the rest. You retreat, you soften, you apologize for a crime you did not commit. This is the professional victim, symbolized by a broken chain used as a leash. Their signature line is always familiar. After everything I have been through, this is how you treat me. Psychologically, they convert pain into authority. Suffering becomes a shield against accountability. Any challenge feels like cruelty. Any boundary feels like betrayal. And because you do not want to be the villain in their story, you comply. Your inner dialogue keeps you trapped. They are fragile. I should be more patient. If I push, I will hurt them. What you do not see is that their identity depends on staying wounded. Healing would remove their leverage. Responsibility would collapse their narrative. Law 3 is unforgiving, but necessary. Pain explains behavior. It does not excuse it. And the open loop you must confront is this. If every boundary makes you a monster in their eyes, what role have you actually been assigned in their story? The fourth pattern thrives on friction. They do not drain you through need or tears, but through endless confrontation. You meet them in conversations that never end, arguments that go nowhere, debates that spiral until you feel small, tired, and strangely guilty for even trying to explain yourself. Picture the scene. A discussion turns tense. You bring facts. They bring certainty. You stay calm. They escalate. They dismiss nuance. They twist words. And somehow, hours later, you are still talking, still defending, still trying to reach someone who never planned to listen. This is the arrogant fool, symbolized by a cracked mirror that reflects nothing but their own face. Their signature line is blunt. You just do not get it. Psychologically, they confuse dominance with volume and repetition. They are not seeking truth. They are seeking exhaustion. Every argument is a test of endurance. If you keep engaging, they win, because your attention is the prize. Your inner dialogue betrays you again. If I explain it better, they will understand. I cannot let them think they are right. But understanding is not their goal. Control is. Law 4 ends the cycle. Never argue with someone whose identity depends on being right. And the open loop remains. What would happen if you stopped trying to convince them and let reality deal with their denial instead? They tell you who they are with a strange kind of pride. They say they are blunt, damaged, unpredictable, intense. They laugh when they cross lines. They shrug when trust breaks. And every time you hesitate, they offer the same explanation, as if it absolves everything that follows. Picture the scene. They betray a confidence. They disappear when you need them. They turn on you without warning. When you confront them, they do not deny it. They look at you calmly and say, "This is just how I am." You feel foolish for expecting more, yet you stay, hoping this time will be different. This is the scorpion, symbolized by the creature that stings even while drowning. Their signature line is always the same. "You knew what I was like." Psychologically, they normalize betrayal by framing it as identity. If harm is nature, then accountability feels unreasonable. And you remain because of your inner dialogue. At least they are honest. Maybe I can handle it. Maybe I am stronger than the others. What you do not realize is that predictability does not make danger safer. It only makes it inevitable. Law 5 is absolute. Never trust someone who mistakes self-awareness for self-control. And the open loop cuts deep. If they have already told you they will sting, why are you still standing in range? Recognition alone is not enough. Seeing the pattern does not stop the game. Power shifts, only when behavior changes. This is where counterplay begins, not with confrontation, but with precision. The first technique is grey rock. Picture a short scene. They provoke you, they complain, they hint at drama. You respond with neutrality, short answers, no emotion, no explanation. Your voice stays flat. Your face stays calm. Psychologically, this works because manipulators feed on reaction. Emotion is oxygen. When you remove it, the fire dies. Without stimulation, their interest fades because there is nothing left to extract. The second technique is agree and amplify. Imagine a moment of conflict. They accuse you, they exaggerate. Instead of defending yourself, you agree calmly and push it further. You say, maybe you are right. Maybe I am exactly what you say. Then you stop talking. This disarms them because resistance is expected, not acceptance. By agreeing without emotion, you remove the battlefield. There is nothing to push against. The power dynamic collapses because their script no longer works. The third technique is the mirror of silence. Picture direct eye contact, a calm face, no words. They speak, they explain, they justify. You remain silent, still, present. Psychologically, silence forces projection. People reveal themselves when there is no interruption. The manipulator begins to feel exposed because they can no longer control the narrative. In that quiet space, power shifts to the one who is not reacting. These techniques are not cruelty. They are containment. They do not harm. They prevent harm. And here is the philosophical spine beneath all of this. Humans are easy to manipulate because they fear abandonment more than exploitation. Because approval feels like survival. Because shame was installed early and reinforced often. Because hope is addictive, especially the hope that someone will finally change. And so people stay. They endure. They explain themselves into exhaustion. But a hard principle cuts through every pattern you have seen. Boundaries are not punishments. They are information. They reveal who respects you without needing access to you. When you stop feeding chaos, it seeks another host. When you stop filling bottomless pits, they call you selfish. When you stop rescuing victims, they call you cruel. When you stop arguing with fools, they call you arrogant. When you step away from scorpions, they call you disloyal. None of that is evidence you are wrong. It is evidence the system no longer benefits from you. This is where the story resolves, not into hardness, but into clarity. You do not need to dominate anyone. You do not need to expose them. You do not need revenge. You need distance and definition. Machiavelli understood this without romance. A man who tries to be good among the not good will be destroyed, not because goodness fails, but because it is misapplied. Stoicism echoes the same truth. You control what is yours, your choices, your responses, your presence. Everything else is noise. When you reclaim those, manipulation loses its grip. You become harder to read, harder to use, easier to respect, not feared, not adored, but grounded. And that is the quiet endgame. Inner freedom is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply stops participating in games designed to drain it. When you leave with your energy intact, when you say no without explaining, when you walk away without guilt, you are no longer kind out of fear. You are kind by choice, and that difference changes everything. What remains is the final consequence, the one most people never reach, because it requires letting go of a familiar identity. When you stop being endlessly available, some relationships end. When you stop explaining yourself, some people misunderstand you on purpose. When you stop rescuing, some narratives collapse. This is not loss. This is filtration. Manipulation survives on access. The moment access is limited, the game ends. And this is where many hesitate, because distance feels like cruelty when you are trained to equate self-sacrifice with virtue. But understand this clearly. Boundaries do not make you cold. They make you legible to yourself. You begin to feel energy return. Decisions become simpler. Resentment fades because you are no longer betraying your instincts to maintain peace. The world responds differently to someone who does not leak themselves into every situation. Not louder, not harsher, just clearer. And clarity is threatening to systems built on confusion. That is why manipulators escalate when they feel you pulling away, not because you are wrong, but because you are slipping beyond their reach. This is the quiet proof that the work is happening. You do not need to announce it. You do not need to justify it. You do not need permission. Inner freedom does not look heroic. It looks calm. It looks like unanswered messages that no longer trigger anxiety. It looks like walking away without rehearsing explanations. It looks like kindness that has edges. This is not a call to become ruthless. It is a call to become precise, to choose where your empathy goes, to decide who earns proximity, to stop confusing tolerance with strength. The paradox is this: when you stop trying to be understood by everyone, you finally understand yourself. When you stop trying to save everyone, you save what matters. And when you stop participating in power games, you regain the only power that cannot be taken from you: control over your presence. If this resonated, it is because you have seen yourself somewhere in these patterns. That awareness is enough to begin, not with confrontation, with withdrawal, with boundaries that speak for you, with silence where explanation used to be. This is not self-help, it is self-possession. And once you have it, no one can harvest what you no longer offer.